Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. I hope your New Year's is going wonderfully so far. In today's episode, it's an interesting one, a really interesting one. In fact, I decided to switch up the episode that I was going to share with you today. So, in the last episode, I said I was going to share about the ways my ex helped me realize about love. But I decided to switch it up and share something a little bit more relevant. As we go into this month of unconditional love, the topic for today is something that needs to be shared before I go into the next episode. So I did a little flipsy on this one. So today I'm going to go into whether unconditional love is actually possible for humans or if it's just an unrealistic concept that we have created. And this is drawing from this really interesting research that I found while doing some searching on the web for my upcoming episodes, and also some from personal experience. And we're going to discover why this question matters for your relationships, and most importantly, of course, always the relationship with yourself. Welcome to Intentionally Single, Seeking But Not Settling. I'm Lauren Jean, your host, integrative wellness coach, and hypnotist. Each week, we explore mindset shifts and mind-body strategies to help you live life intentionally single and content while remaining open to possibilities. Unlike typical dating advice, we focus on personal fulfillment to attract genuine love. Join us to transform unconscious patterns and embrace your intentionally single lifestyle. Stop feeling deflated by the dating world and start prioritizing the most important relationship, the one with yourself. Welcome to Intentionally Single, Seeking, Not Settling. I am your host, Lauren Jean. Today, we're diving into a question that challenges everything we think we know and have heard about love. Is unconditional love even possible for humans? Let's dive deep into what we commonly believe about unconditional love. I'm sure you've heard this term thrown around and used in relationships and specifically with parents. They often say, I love my children unconditionally. And it's almost expected, right? Like if you as a parent didn't love your children unconditionally, you might think that there's something wrong with you. So recent research reveals something really profound about this claim. It may represent a form of over-the-top confidence or pride, which can be very damaging, because none of us honestly know if our love will remain unchanged under all circumstances, even with children. When we say we have unconditional love for someone, we are essentially saying it will survive any single possible scenario, like anything at all. This person can do anything and we will love them unconditionally. We're stating this, that no matter what changes occur in the person that we love, or how we ourselves might transform, and regardless of what life throws at us, our love will remain constant and persistent no matter what. But how can we possibly know this? Have you ever been in this situation before? Ask yourself this. I am curious to know. How can we predict our capacity to love under circumstances that we have never faced before? So something new gets thrown in your face. How can you handle that? How can you continue to unconditionally love a person no matter what? The science of human connection shows us something really interesting about our capacity for love as humans. Even our strongest bonds can be profoundly affected by harsh circumstances. Consider what happens when someone faces a severe trauma or an illness, not just to the person they love, but to themselves. Our emotional capacity is not unlimited. It's not unlimited. It can be stretched, it can be strained, and sometimes it can even be broken by the challenges that we face in life. Our experiences shape our ability to love in ways that we don't often want to even acknowledge, such as past relationship wounds, childhood trauma, life's disappointments. These all leave their impact on our capacity for a true connection. And even more importantly, our understanding of love evolves as we grow and as we change, things are forever changing. And what we once thought was unconditional love might reveal itself to be something completely different when it's kind of tested by these real life circumstances. We are humans and we have these emotions that kind of get thrown out of whack, and we cannot always predict what's going to happen. And it's not about cynicism. It's about understanding this true nature of human love. When we can recognize this condition in human love, we can then build stronger, more authentic connections based on these fundamental understandings rather than having these idealistic promises that may or may not be able to withstand all of the stretching. Something else fascinating about how we've come to understand this unconditional love. So let's go into a little history here. Historically, and yes, I did do the research on this. So historically, the concept comes from religious traditions, unconditional love, that is. This comes from religious traditions, particularly the idea of this divine love that loves infinite and unchanging and truly without conditions. But this is what we've made a crucial mistake in. We've tried to apply this divine model to human relationships, which are not divine. We have emotions. We get upset. We get sad. We get anxiety. We get depressed. We get all of these things. And these divine characters in the history, like the stories that we hear in history about religious traditions, they kind of are unshakable, but we are not. And the research also shows that human love operates so incredibly different. Our capacity for love is naturally tied to our human experience, our nervous system, our emotional development, and the life circumstances that we get thrown at every single day. When we experience trauma, for instance, our very ability to connect and love can be profoundly altered. And it's not a failure of love, it's just part of our human nature. I want to come back to this parent love relationship, one that is often cited as the closest thing to unconditional love that humans can achieve. And I personally can vouch for this, saying that, yes, I have felt this way. And this is, again, considered the most primal bond, but it still has its limitations. Parents who have experienced severe trauma or mental illnesses, they might find that their capacity for consistent love is affected because they have maybe not faced the problems that they have had in their past, illnesses or traumas. And children who become violent or destructive might even strain their parents' ability to maintain that loving connection. If a child has gotten involved in, let's say, drugs or alcohol, and they just seem to be out of control, a parent might really have a hard time constantly coming back to that unconditional love feeling because there are conditions. But it doesn't mean that the love isn't deep or like it's not real. It just simply means that it's human. And also, research says something deep even more. And it says perhaps we need to stop measuring this human love against an unrealistic standard. Maybe we need to call it something else. Maybe true wisdom lies in understanding and working with the conditions that affect our love rather than pretending that they don't exist. So instead of wiping them under the rug or pretending like there are no emotions, maybe we need to actually face that and bring those conditions because it will help us become more conscious. And it doesn't make the human love less valuable or meaningful. It just makes it more precious because it exists within ourselves and is not despite our human limitations. Something really interesting about authentic relationships that can emerge when we stop clinging to the idea of unconditionally loving someone. When we can accept that human love has natural limitations, we can actually create deeper, more honest connections. Think about what happens in real relationships. We often try to prove our love by claiming that it says it has no bounds, no limits, no conditions, right? But what's fascinating is this very claim can prevent us from acknowledging and working with the very real conditions that affect our capacity to actually love. It's like trying to build a house while pretending that there is no gravity. What if instead of desiring unconditional love with someone that you love and you want to say you love unconditionally, what if we focused on developing conscious love? I know that what I said that this was Unconditional Love Month, but this was before this research caught my eye. And I read the article and I had a change of perspective. And I'm being completely honest here. I really had a change of perspective. This is also why I chose to do this episode today instead of the one that I had originally planned. I am human, so things are going to change and shift as I get more into this topic, do more research, and bring it here to the podcast to share with you. Conscious love means acknowledging that while our love might have conditions, we can then work with these conditions mindfully. We can recognize when our capacity for love is being tested or stretched, and when we need to take a step back, and when we need support, and also when we need to set boundaries or when we need to work on healing ourselves. And this brings us to the most interesting idea. Is the one place where unconditional love might actually be possible is something that I talk about all of the time on this show, is the one with ourselves, the relationship we have with ourselves. So, unlike our relationships with others, our relationship with ourselves is one where we can truly never leave. We have to be there with ourselves all of the time, through every win, every failure, every transformation, every grow, everything. But this is crucial to understand. Even self-love is not automatically unconditional. It's something that we need to consciously develop. It means staying present and learning with ourselves through our darkest moments without abandoning ourselves, through our failures without condemning ourselves, through our growth without judging ourselves, and through our changes without rejecting ourselves. Understanding these human limitations can deepen our relationships everywhere. When we stop trying to force our love to be unconditional, like in that divine sense I shared earlier with the religious text, we can start to appreciate the beauty of conscious, intentional human love. So that's like bringing all of our shit with us and being conscious of when that stuff is surfacing so that we can be conscious and we can use those conditions to help us learn conscious love and stop trying to pretend to be all perfect and loving someone unconditionally. Because according to this research, at least for now, that's not even really a possible thing unless you're working with learning to love yourself unconditionally. And think about how freeing this is. Instead of feeling guilty when any type of circumstance tests our love with someone, we can come to understand and acknowledge that this is a part just of the human experience. We can work with those limitations rather than against them. So, no resistance, just acceptance. We can recognize when we need support, when we need boundaries, and when we need time to process and when we need time to heal. And this is, again, particularly relevant in these parent-child relationships. Rather than claiming unconditional love for your child, which can sometimes be used to avoid addressing real issues, parents can give their kids this model. They can be honest. It's an authentic love. They can show their children that love can be both limited and it can be deep, and that it requires work and attention, and that it's okay to acknowledge when it's feeling strained or when they're feeling stressed. But what's truly transformative is when we can accept these human conditions and these limitations. We can create something even more meaningful than unconditional love. We can create intentional, conscious love. Love that sees and acknowledges challenges, love that works through difficulties, love that grows stronger because it acknowledges its own limitations. Consider how this can play out in your real relationships. Instead of making these gigantic, grand promises of these unchanging love, we can say, I acknowledge that both you and I will change. As corny as that sounds, yes, I can acknowledge that both you and I will change, and I commit to working through those changes together. I commit to being honest about my limitations and respectful of yours. So, I've said a lot so far, and I really enjoyed this article. But let me continue with how we can practically apply this understanding of conscious love in our daily lives. It means, especially if you're navigating the single journey, understanding that human love has its natural limitations does not mean settling for less. It actually means creating something more real for you. When we embrace this idea of conscious love, particularly with ourselves, we develop what is called resilient intimacy. This means, first, we acknowledge our human capacity for love will fluctuate. Some days we'll feel more connected, more loving, more open. Other days we'll feel kind of like contracted, guarded, protective of ourselves, and sometimes disconnected. And this is a natural ebb and flow. It's not failure, it's just part of being human. Give yourself a break. Secondly, we can recognize that love requires active choice. It's like it's a job, but something we can really enjoy. Rather than expecting love to be this automatic, unchanging, perfect force, we can change to show up for ourselves and others even when it's challenging, when we're feeling all the feels. This conscious choosing is actually more powerful than any automatic, unconditional response could be because you are present with it. You are being mindful. You are aware that it is happening. I want you to take a moment to reflect on how this might change your approach to your relationships. Take a moment and think about that. Instead of seeking someone who claims to love you unconditionally, what if you looked for someone who is committed to conscious love and who was willing to face their own conditions? Someone who's willing to acknowledge that they have limitations while still choosing to work through the challenges with you, rather than being in a relationship with someone who wants to run the other way when things get hard. The truth is, knowing our love has conditions doesn't make it less valuable. And if anything, it makes it more precious because we're choosing it with full awareness of our human limitations. We're essentially saying, I see the reality of what this means, and I'm still choosing to love. This to me is the deepest understanding that we could have to bring to our relationships. And it allows you to be fully you without being apologetic. Today, guys, we have looked into something that might feel challenging, which is the idea that unconditional love may not be possible between humans. We've learned that traditional religions speak of divine unconditional love. Us everyday humans operate differently, being naturally influenced by our experiences, our traumas, our circumstances, the people around us. But what makes this understanding powerful is when we stop trying to achieve the impossible standard of unconditional love, we can create something more valuable, which is conscious, intentional love, which, yes, does take work and it does take facing the hard things. This kind of love acknowledges our limitations as humans while still choosing to be with that person through connection and growth and understanding. Most importantly, we've discovered that while unconditional love might not be possible between humans, our relationship with ourselves offers this unique opportunity to practice a form of love that comes closest to being unconditional, even though it requires conscious development and conscious choice. Like, you have to be in it and you have to be aware of it. I want to thank you so much for listening to this show today. I really enjoyed putting this one together and I enjoyed reading that article. And I want to know if today's perspective and today's research on love has shifted your thinking. I would absolutely love to hear from you. Please feel free and reach out. you can email me at intentionallysinglepodcast@gmail.com. And I would love to know what you thought and share how this new understanding might change your approach to your relationships, with the intimate relationships that you're in, and the relationship with yourself. And please, if this episode resonated with you, please take a moment to rate and review in whatever podcast player that you're listening to this on. Your review helps others to find this message about authentic love. Now, I had originally planned a different episode for today, like I shared earlier, but after discovering this fascinating research about unconditional love, I knew I had to share these insights with you first. So next week, I'm going to go back to the original episode I had planned, and the title might shift, but it is The Ways My Ex Taught Me About Love, and it's not how you think. We're going to explore how sometimes our greatest lessons about love come from unexpected sources, even the relationships we thought failed. And if today's episode challenged your beliefs about love, next week's will completely transform how you view your past relationships. Thank you so much again for tuning in to Intentionally Single, Seeking, Not Settling. I'm Lauren Jean, reminding you that conscious love might be even more valuable than unconditional love. And until next time, keep growing. Please stay curious. Remember, understanding our limitations doesn't make our love less meaningful. It makes it more authentic. And please, as always, stay open to the possibilities. I'll talk to you next time.